Hi everybody, this is TheHande's and welcome to another Heatcast. This time on She-Ra, the Princess of Power, the 5th and final season. So this is going to be another rambly sort of Heatcast, and where I'm going to share my thoughts, raw, unfiltered, unscripted, about the final season of the She-Ra Netflix show. And I'm not going to be talking about any other He-Man related stuff right now. I will say, though, that the 60-second He-Man reviews obviously haven't come back because the New Adventures uploads haven't resumed, unfortunately. But, what did I think of... let's get right to the point. What did I think of the 5th and final season of She-Ra? Well, I will say I was left with slightly mixed feelings. I do feel this season did not live up to the quality of the previous season. I actually went and re-listened to my previous Heatcast on season 4, and it does feel like I was a lot more enthusiastic about that season, what it accomplished. And whereas when I watched season 5, I will say one thing I do like is the fact that this show was able to go out on its own terms. That they said quite definitively that this is the final season. This is going to wrap up the story, and that'll be it. Because a lot of television shows, let's face it, don't have that luxury. You either get canceled too early, or you keep going until eventually people get a little sick and tired of your show. And I am just incredibly impressed that the She-Ra Netflix show managed to get up to season 5. Provided that, of course, seasons 2 and 3 were those weird little mini seasons. But beyond that, that's impressive for any cartoon show. That's an impressive feat. I also do think that they wrapped up the storylines very nicely. And this is the thing, normally, so I do want to make it very clear that I did like a lot of the stuff in this season. But I have a lot of nitpicks. And normally when I do these, where generally I have a positive vibe about something, I try to talk about the nitpicks first and leave the positives, and do the positives afterwards. But I feel like for this podcast, I think I need to first get all the positives out of the way, and then I'll talk about the nitpicks and what I think this show could have definitely done better. Because there was room left for improvement. There were some problems that the show suffered from all the way through the different seasons. And yeah, I'm still of this. I still think season 1 was the best season. Season 4 was a close second place. Lots of really good stuff in season 4. Some stuff that I had actually managed to forget about when we kicked off the 5th and final season. And alright, so the number one thing that I did like about it is that they did finally, they finally dealt with that whole Catra, Adora story arc. I do feel they took their sweet time with it. That's the thing about this season, reminded me a lot of season 3, in the sense that it was very story-driven. There were not, to my recollection, too many, funny episodes, and that wouldn't have been appropriate anyway, because this entire episode really has to do with Horde Prime's blockade or invasion of Etheria. We did get some nice story bits here, some that did leave me a little bit amused, but I'll get to that in the latter half of it. And we did see Horde Prime, what his entire big dealio is, and we had a big fight, with the struggle against Horde Prime and everything, and the big flashy ending finale, went out with a bang. That was really one major thing that I really liked about it, is that even if it got a little melodramatic towards the end, it's nice to see that the show decided to go in a very big way, go out on a big way. So that was another thing I really liked. So most of the things it handled very well, and everything got wrapped up. The finale was a little weird, because I kind of still, even though this is supposed to be the final season, I still got a little bit of a vibe like they're leaving the door ever so slightly ajar for a continuation. One thing that I will say already that this season, however, did close off, any possibilities of a He-Man crossover because of, well, a certain plot point that was given. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this, by the way. So if you haven't watched the season, like, maybe don't listen to my thoughts on it before all of that. All right. So the ending like felt like they left it a little bit. Like they left the back door a little bit ajar, not like fully open or anything. So overall, they did wrap up everything quite nicely. Now, having said that, there were many writing decisions and many kind of plot developments throughout the season that, in my view, unfortunately betray some structural flaws with the show. Like, don't get me wrong, absolutely, overall, quality-wise, I still stand by this when I said in my very first, on my review of the first season of the She-Ra Netflix show, that this show is absolutely way above the quality of the Filmation original. That is a bit unfair because I think even compared to He-Man, the Filmation She-Ra show is a bit of a hodgepodge, a bit of a hot mess at times, because of really slipshotty quality control. But I still like it. That's the reason I do the She-Ra reviews as well as the He-Man reviews. But I do feel like there were several problems that the writers kind of created for themselves early on. And then a lot of the stuff, and it does reflect on further seasons. So the big balancing act, which they failed to do in seasons 2 and 3, and they kind of got right in season 4. Again, it got slanted very heavily in one direction. Was the balance of fun one-off episodes, and then the story arc, and especially for a show like this one that has a central ongoing storyline. And it's not that kind of status quo cartoon show that the original was. It is difficult to write for that kind of show and write like consistently funny one-off episodes or anything like that. So it did not surprise me that season 5 was a lot more serious than any of the prior seasons. And there were good character moments, but it did feel like it honestly felt like the story was taking its sweet time getting going this time. Entrapta was very much at the core of this season. I really love that. Okay, but we're now moving into the territory of things I didn't like about this season. I think we have to talk about the two big things that this version of She-Ra did let me down on. And number one was the characters, and more specifically the fact that we never did get a lot of Horsemen. It makes a bit more sense that we saw Horde Prime and what his deal is. It's basically kind of like Horde Prime's got this kind of Borg thing going, where he's trying to subjugate the entire galaxy by mind controlling everybody. He uses an army of robots, whereas the Horde troopers on Etheria were all people. And then he has an army of clones who kind of operate as a hive mind with him, which what Hordak was originally was one of those clones. And that's that is a kind of a scary idea because it taps into that idea that you lose your identity because you're being mind controlled by everybody. But that kind of now explains to me a lot why we never got more Horsemen, because literally like the only ones we ever had to begin with were Shadow Weaver, Catra, Scorpia, and then Entrapta kind of flip-flops, and then, but in the end, all of those guys basically end up going on the side of the good guys. So it's a problem. Like that's the thing. That's the funny thing. Like how did the bad guys, like the Horde army, manage to get any kind of variety into their villains galore? Well, they started mind controlling some of the princesses, so that was really weird. That kind of felt, that's the thing. So the problem this show has had all throughout is that every season we're introduced new characters. It's the Princess Alliance in the first season. Second season, oh god, I'm trying to remember now. Hantaro wasn't there yet, was he? Was she? Yes, she was. And then Double Trouble was in season 4. Season 5 didn't have any new characters, did it? I don't recall. So you introduce characters, and then they're relevant for a couple of episodes, and then they go away. And that's, ironically, we kind of have the same problem as well on the Filmation She-Ra show, where, She-Ra's like entourage, minus, I will say though, this is something that they did keep throughout the series run, is that Bow and Glimmer were always there. So that's at least one thing, but the rest of the supporting cast is just very interchangeable. Whatever episode happens to require one of the other princesses, they just kind of pull them out of there and never really manage to give them a lot of development. And it's kind of annoying because in this season, like, Mermista is mind controlled. Mermista has kind of been one of the few of those supporting characters that really stood out for me, and then she's like mind controlled for for most of this season. I do think it was really funny that Spinnerella and Natasha take the forefront this season, because it was a joke back in season 1, like, that they're these no-name characters, and then they show up in the final battle at the end of the season, and it was kind of a funny thing. And I do like Natasha. Natasha was a good character to throw in there, but it was like, it definitely put in full display what the whole problem with the support cast of this show is, that they could not commit to those characters, and also that the Horde in this version just isn't as interesting. Like, who are the other? There's the loser squad of Kyle, the lizard guy, and the black girl. So, like, they had a really good episode in season 4. This was kind of cute, and then we don't see hind or hair of them until the final episode of season 5 again. Both dads did come back. They had dialogue. That was kind of nice. But that is really kind of emblematic of the problems. Also, I gotta say, I did not like the fact that they shaved Catra's head. Like, are you kidding me? That looked awful. I felt really bad for her. Like, I kind of liked her look pre-shaving, so, And I'm entirely sure about that Milog, Milog character. I guess, my sister's boyfriend actually suggested this, and I think this has to be the case. Like, she was kind of like the show version now of Catra's cat form, but like as a character. And yeah, that was kind of an interesting move. I thought, there were a lot of interesting things about this season, don't get me wrong. Okay, but that's the thing. Like, I do think that the character balancing beyond the main core cast, which is Adora, Glimmer, Bow, and Catra, I do think the rest of the characters just got very even exposure throughout the series. Most of all, Hordak. I'll talk about him in just a second. I did like this season how they finally kind of consolidated and trapped as like very weird characterization. There's a part of me that wants to say, like, is this character's like maybe supposed to be like autistic representation, but it's just like, to me it just seems like the writers just could not make up their minds about this character. Like, she goes on the side of the bad guys briefly, but she's really a good guy. She doesn't like mean to do bad stuff. And this season, like, she does the most she can to redeem her past terrible behavior, if you will. So, there's that. Okay, so I will say there has been a general issue with the characters of this show. The other issue is, like, this is another thing that I feel that they never really committed to, was, like, how important is the backstory of where She-Ra's sword came from, and the fact that she is Eternian and everything. Like, because this season, they definitively did close out the possibility of a He-Man crossover. Why? Because we were revealed that the Eternians are dead, long dead. They don't exist. Eternia doesn't exist anywhere, or if it does, it's like a dead planet or something. And the way it dawned on me happened in the most depressing way possible, is when they hear that final recording from Mara, and we finally learn what Grayskull is. And we find out that it literally was just the name of a rebel group Grayskull. So that's what Mara's like original transformation yell, which Adora then copies, was about. That when she says, "For the honor of Grayskull," she means literally this group of people called Grayskull. That was a little sad, I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, I do get that they probably didn't want to, how do I put this nicely? I think they did not want them to possibly daisy chain themselves or, commit themselves to a plot continuity that they may not be able to follow up on in the future. Because, of course, we know Netflix has two separate He-Man cartoons in the works. One of them is unrelated to this, which is the supposed continuation of is it Masters of the Universe Revelation, and it's supposed to be the sequel series to the Filmation show. I've talked about it in my Let's Plays that when they announced the voice cast, I thought that was kind of cool because some of the actors there are pretty cool. But again, I will say again that I will only talk about that when and if it comes out. It is looking more and more certain now that it's going to come out, at least. So that's nice, that gives me something to look forward to in the future. But now this kind of definitively points to the fact that the other He-Man cartoon, and if that He-Man cartoon indeed ever comes to fruition, which is going to be called just He-Man and the Masters of the Universe again, that it will probably have no connection with this show, and that's a bit sad. But at the same time, I kind of get it. They didn't want to forcibly connect those things, but it also kind of very disappointingly kind of pushes all of that other history stuff about the Eternians, or quote unquote the first ones. It kind of sweeps it all under the rug. Okay, this is not relevant to our storyline anymore because this whole season was so focused on fighting and defeating Horde Prime. And yeah, and I'm not going to be I did not like Horde Prime as a villain. I think he was kind of kind of like a generic anime villain a little bit. Not gonna lie, and that was so sad. Hordak never really got his moment in the sun. We had the wrong Hordak, the other clone that they liberate and who's helping out Entrapta. And he is a fun character, don't get me wrong, but I really, really, really wanted them, to rescue Hordak, have Hordak and She-Ra, ally, fight alongside each other, and finally see a little bit more of Entrapta. And that's the other thing. Oh my god, when in the end when Horde Prime gets defeated and all the clones lose their connection to, his mind, and and that's when Hordak does get freed. It bothered me so much that he still had the green eyes and that he didn't turn back to red when he was still his own individual. Little artistic mistake there. Really wanted to see Hordak's glowing red eyes again. That would have been so much better in my opinion. And that is kind of the big letdown. So many of the characters from previous seasons, they just became kind of irrelevant during this one. We have a Double Trouble do literally just a one episode cameo, and again he's friggin' masquerading as pre-existing Filmation characters. Peekaboo in this case. They had Swen also there, which I always feel weird. I know it's Swen, but I always want to say it as Sven, because Sven's a name and Swen isn't, but I guess it is his name, and it's weird. Swen, if you don't know your She-Ra lore, was on the Filmation show. He was the Seahawk's first mate, but because Seahawk in this show is kind of like a fuck up, he doesn't really have a crew. So in this version, Swen is a female piano player at the underwater club. That was another weird one. That was the infiltration episode. That was that was the one fun episode. I will say that was the one fun and silly episode when they're trying to infiltrate and look for Peekaboo. But then it turns out to be a complete red herring because Peekaboo is actually Double Trouble, and I hate that. I hate that they pulled the rug from under me again with that one. I felt very similar as with in the previous season with Flood Arena. Not to say, I will say, Peekaboo and Flood Arena on the original Filmation shows were not very good characters. Peekaboo is at the center of a pretty good episode, but she is not a very interesting character. That's one thing I need to get it off my chest here. And I do like what this version of She-Ra did with the characters. This is why I would have loved for there to have been a little bit more of those fun one-off episodes, because they always find new fun twists on the characters, and that's what I really liked. I swear, if they had gone in a slightly more one-offy status quo show kind of thing, it would have been interesting to see them do Snout Spout at some point. But yeah, so also they introduced another weird but when they're looking for the crystals to, when they're trying to get back to Etheria after they saved Catra and Glimmer, when they meet the Star siblings or whatever the hell they were, like there's another bunch of characters. I fully expected that they were gonna come along and help with the fight on Etheria, but no, I guess there wasn't room on the spaceship or something. Like, like, okay, whatevs. And oh yeah, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Like, okay, one thing that this show did. And I guess this is they feel the need to do this with cartoons these days, just to make it feel like there's stakes in the show. The two big character deaths on this show I was not a fan of either one. The first one, again, this is a big spoiler if you haven't watched the seasons up to this point. The Queen Angela died at the end of season 3, and you might remember my original couch vlog. I was really upset by that, because I did not see any good reason for why that needed to happen. Other than it was used to kind of kick off the beginning of season 4, and for that, in the context of that, it makes it's a slightly good character move. I guess it forced like Glimmer to take control and everything, but it kind of led to this annoying thing which was like my least favorite thing about season 4, which was this awful teen drama thing with Glimmer, Bo, and Adora. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. Like with Adora and Catra, I do like the fact that they devoted a lot of time to just like dissecting Catra's character in this season. But like I said, it kind of got a little melodramatic towards the end, and and I was kind of sure originally, or based on the previous season, that they were actually going to go up against audience expectations, that Adora and Catra, have kind of shut each other out as people. But no, of course they kiss and make up. They literally kiss and make up in it. So. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just I was so over that particular plot point at that point. It really didn't do much for me. I actually thought it was I thought it was kind of adorable that sorry, Bo and Glimmer ended up together in this show. That was sweet. That was kind of awesome. And generally, I did like all of the character ships. I don't think there was a character ship on the show I didn't like. There were just ships that obviously didn't get enough screen time and Trap Deck. So, yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I just like it when the villains have those kinds of moments. Yeah, and I wouldn't say that this series completely fixed Swiftwind's character. I guess he was a little bit more likable this season because he's a bit down because Adora's not around, and but yeah, he's another character who I feel this show never really did properly. Like Swiftwind was an underdeveloped character. Like they gave individual, and it's not for a lack of trying either. Like they gave him all the chances in the world. I just feel like Swiftwind just never really realize his full potential. And I know a lot of this is, like I said, part of the problem is they just had too many characters. They could have scaled back or they should have I think at most 10 central characters stick to them. Oh, sorry, I got off track. So I was talking about the character deaths. So Queen Angela's death, kind of dumb, but it was used well as a catalyst for season 4. Shadow Weaver's death, it came in a moment where I started to feel like Shadow Weaver has not been relevant since the end of season 2, and that they were just desperate to find something useful for her to do, so they kill her off. We did see Under the Mask. That was cool. Her death was very badass. I'm not gonna lie. It was a cool scene, but utterly meaningless. That's the character's redemption, that she kills herself. Felt a little underwhelming. Gotta be honest. I really wish that Shadow Weaver could have in some way survived until the end of the series, but I think they ran into the Obi-Wan problem, which is the thing about, if you don't know about Star Wars Episode 4, is that originally at the end of Star Wars Episode 4, Obi-Wan wasn't actually supposed to die while fighting Vader, but the story, it's not true that Alec Guinness hated the character and told George Lucas to kill him. That's bullshit. That's a story that's been turned around. The truth is, George Lucas realized that Obi-Wan didn't have anything to do, so he decided, well, let's give him a very dramatic character death, and that'll propel the heroes onward. And but when they did it here in She-Ra, it just felt very like, really? I think they did the math and thought, yeah, we can afford to lose a character. But really, Shadow Weaver? Really, like, somebody? I guess it all comes down to the fact that Shadow Weaver just hasn't been very prominent for a good long while. So, that's the thing. She-Ra's new outfit this season, because, of course, her sword got broken in the previous season, so she gets the new sword and a new outfit. That was kind of cool. Kind of a pointless thing, I think, to redesign her outfit like during the last season, but kind of cool. It was kind of cool. I feel like there was something else I really wanted to talk about, but I cannot, for the death of me, remember it right now. Yeah, so that was the thing. Like, I do feel like that was the main issue, was just that they could have done a little bit more with the characters. But like I said, I really don't feel like complaining about that too much, because, like I said, they did manage to wrap up everything by the end. Big flashy finale, really like that. And there were cool moments, like that, the Milog and some of the stuff with Catra, the wrong Hordak, and Trapta doing a lot of funny stuff during this season. The underwater episode was pretty great. But yeah, I kind of wish Horde Prime would have been a more epic villain. Like, he never really lived up to his potential either, in my view. But I think that was just the thing that he like I said, he had that Borg thing going. And, losing your identity kind of stuff is a bit scary, but it's kind of an impersonal threat as well. Like, it would have been more rewarding if Horde Prime had a little bit more personality and was a little bit more... I mean, he's plenty sinister, don't get me wrong, and he is a bit of a creep. But, like, he wasn't the most imposing villain that they could have made him into. Yeah, but I think that about wraps it up. So, really don't have anything fantastic to say here at the end. I'm looking forward to seeing what proper She-Ra or He-Man properties come out in the future, if any do come out. And like I said, I was just happy when they made the first season of She-Ra, because it was just so nice to have a new cartoon in this franchise. And I'm impressed that they got it this far. I'm impressed that they were able to finish it like this. Overall, left me with a good feeling. They could have done a lot of things better, but yeah, I still enjoyed it. Okay, but this has been Hannu the Hande Mäkinen. Until next time, I have the power, so can you.